She's 117.
Oh,
Sorry.
we've got that stuff. I'm Lakshmi Fjord. My PhD expertise is in disparities in access to medicine and state resources, just like this VDEQ, that are based on race, poverty, age, and disability, and I'm an unpaid professional expert that represents the People's Tribunal on Human Rights Environmental Justice Impacts of frack gas, which is not natural gas infrastructure. For 3 years, I have designed and conducted a 99 household study of Union Hill, which follows NIH protocols, and it uses the NEPA review format. Those 99 households lie closely within 150 feet on all sides. So really what I'm addressing in these remarks is the evidence of that study and their basis in site non-suitability. That study evidence found majority African American race, 600% higher population size than Dominion applications, close proximity, former slave and freedman history, existing home places, cemeteries, unmarked slave burials, freedmen churches and school sites, predominantly elderly and children age ranges, large numbers of existing health conditions, and land use based on cultural continuity at that impact site. This 3-year public record includes 20 comments by me at every stage, including the local, including Preservations Virginia giving most endangered historic site to Union Hill in 2016. My question is, does the Air Pollution Control Board have the authority and responsibility to also reject air permits and not just approve them? In your code it states site suitability must be considered, yet in Buckingham, Mr. Dowd told us that DEQ and Air Control Board leaves site suitability into local processes. But what if the very non-suitability of this compressor station is based on Buckingham's current manifestations of an over 300-year history and legacy of slavery, where in fear of paying restitution, all the records of slavery were destroyed so that people, 2-to-1 majority couldn't vote for restitution, where plantation owners and descendants still live in close numbers, where plantation's descendants received a huge windfall for these 68 acres that they bought and have devalued, where speaking out against the compressor station site, African Americans in this room have faced retaliation and shutting. So Mr. Dowd told us that the only time DEQ has failed an air permit is the one submitted by Dominion for this compressor station because it was incomplete and inaccurate and didn't follow backed. So the question is, if in fact it was that erasure of this population that allowed Dominion to not have a NEPA review, to allow 75% thinner pipes, that allows 17-mile distances between cutoffs, isn't it up to the Air Control Board to revisit this permit? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Ruby Laurie. And I'm supposed to give my name and my address, but I didn't hear anybody else give me their address.
The address is here, you're fine.
Okay, thank you. I am a member of the Friends of Buckingham and Concern for the New Generation. I am originally from Southern California. I moved here almost 15 years ago with my husband. And after moving here, I understood why he wanted to come back home. Buckingham is a beautiful place and one of the most quiet and peaceful. No pollution, no stress, and lots of clean air. This is an agricultural area where we raise crops and cattle, not for Dominion ACP.
Here's what I found.
As you know, these gases will have to be fracked, which will emit unsafe gases and poisons, polluting this most precious air that we breathe. Finally, many studies have shown that hazardous and solid waste facilities, power stations, and so on, are excessively sited in communities of color and low-income neighborhoods, and have a negative effect on the health and well-being of us living in the Union Hill Wood area. It also affects our livestock, and domestic animals. My husband and I retired here just to live out our golden years in the now clean air that we breathe. We want to keep the peace, quietness. We want to be able to sit outdoors and look up into the night sky and see the beautiful moon and twinkling stars. I just wanted to point out that some of the long-term health effects are lung cancer and respiratory diseases, heart disease, organ damage, and irreversible nerve damage. What we need is clean air. So for the people that came and said, what's good for our community, they don't live in our community. So they can't speak what is good for our community. We can only speak what is good for our community. And we want it to stay just like it is. We do matter. You people have looked over us as if we don't exist. You need to be men and women and stand up for what is right, even if you have to stand alone. Because that's what I'm doing. I'm standing up for what is right. Because I want to be able to live out my golden years. Thank you.
The Hanuman, I live here in Buckingham, about 5 miles from the proposed compressor station, and at Yogaville, so quite near to the proposed pipeline as well. After listening to 46 commenters before me, it really sticks in my mind that no one who has spoken in favor of this project, this ACP, this compressor station, live in the community. They're speaking from a distance. The other thing that I really wonder is what amount of poison or pollution is okay? Isn't it all right to have none? Why should we want to add pollution? How can we say that any amount of this is going to be all right for us? I question how you can justify approving a 54,000 horsepower Buckingham compressor station when the mission in the DEQ information states that Virginia's diverse geography and abundant natural resources benefit agriculture, industry, and commerce and provide a rich environment for people, plants, and wildlife to ensure the continued vitality of what the Commonwealth has to offer. The mission of the Department of Environmental Quality is to protect and improve the environment for the well-being of all Virginians. That sounds so noble. How will you achieve this mission if you allow over 200 tons of annual air pollutants and additionally 296,000 tons of CO2 and 5.3 tons of hazardous air pollutant emissions every year? From your town hall post, there's a statement of the figures for how many tons or partial tons will be emitted. So I've included that here in my statement, which I will be leaving with you. As Hurricane Florence threatens us, it seems to me a wake-up call that business as usual no longer applies. Complying with previous standards is no longer adequate. To date, President Trump's acting EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler gave the oil and gas industry a huge break at the expense of the American public. Companies will be able to put off crucially important leak detection and repair requirements. Now is not the time to be undermining our protections. This summer, a comprehensive study in Science magazine found that methane emissions from oil and gas.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
In your written comment.
My name is Marie Gillespie. Before I start, I just want to say I'm sorry we had to have these hearings on the day of such historic sadness memorial for 9/11. I want to make sure we remember those, and especially have a affinity due to my home being New York. former home. Again, as I said, my name is Marie Gillespie, and I live in my home with my husband Silas, Union Hill. And I always say the first house on Union Hill. We have acreage which we purchased over 25 years ago. We came to Buckingham County at the urging of relatives who encouraged us to take advantage of such a beautiful countryside, clean air, good clean springs, and well water. We purchased land and we could hardly contain our eagerness to retire and relocate to Union Hill, an area looked upon as a historical, thriving, respectful community populated by many descendants of freedmen. We were excited about living in an area where formerly populated by slaves that may have been some of our relatives, friends, or even family members. This was indeed a place we wanted to be. I am here to ask you to reject the application for the permit for the ACP pipeline, for air permit, relative to the construction of the pipeline and the compressor station. As the gentleman said before, I am too scared because I live adjacent to the pipeline and a few yards from the compressor station. Before sharing my pain regarding the project, I requested the agency add some extension to the public hearing, and I hear that you have, and I appreciate that. With a few remaining minutes, I would like you to know how I feel about the close proximity of the compressor station and the pipeline. My concern for our family members, including that of my asthmatic daughter and granddaughter, who visits regularly. I'm concerned about the hazard to the water, to the air, and each one of us, the toxic pollutants and emissions of both. How can you assure me that our health will not be compromised? What has been done to assess the long-range effect on our health? The figures given by Dominion are based on modules that don't actually represent or reflect the current health of the African American population of Union Hill. I also request that you do a comprehensive risk assessment to consider the health effects, the air and the water. I cannot believe that there wouldn't be some change. I'm almost paralyzed. My fear that my well will be undrinkable and the air polluted. When I hear the... Thank you.
Divya Baird too. I'm with Friends of Buckingham. I'm the baseline testing project manager. You, DEQ and Dominion, assure us this compressor station would be the best in class, meeting all regulations. We like our air and water clean, and we don't want the tons of pollutants dumped on us that the regulations say are okay. Dominion tells us safety is first, but for 4 years now, we have asked for and have yet to see evacuation plans. An air permit would be granted without considering health and safety first, before considering worst case scenarios. The Red Cross could easily help you figure things out, and they are motivated, even if our elected officials are not. We don't want anyone to live near a high-pressure 57,000 plus horsepower compressor station, which is highly explosive. Methane is not only highly explosive, it's also 87 times more of a greenhouse gas and ozone destroyer than is carbon dioxide, highly toxic and an easy terrorist target. You tell us that you won't consider what we have repeatedly asserted, that there is no need for these pipelines. The owners of the Transco pipeline, as you've heard, have said there are enough pipelines in place to meet demand. It's well known that renewables are far more economical. You insist that you will narrowly evaluate just the air permit, yet this permit is the last piece to greenlight the whole shebang. You will ignore that the NAACP has asked for a halt to the ACP and the MVP. The Governor's Advisory Council on Environmental Justice has asked for a moratorium. FERC has issued a stop work order for non-compliance. We asked for a 30-day extension of the comment period, and prior to permitting, the DEQ must require and complete a quantified risk assessment and work with other state agencies to conduct a health risk assessment and health impact assessment. This would counter the compartmentalization of hazards to water, from hazards to air, from safety, environmental justice, health impacts, from a mix of pollutants, site suitability, need, etc. As baseline testing project manager for Friends of Buckingham, I went to the local, then regional, health departments to ask for assessments. They sent me on to you, the DEQ, who also said no. We were left to defend for ourselves. Thus, we did the right thing, taking up the hefty project of testing 30 well water sites close to the 26 miles of proposed ACP in Buckingham. We have done air monitoring for particulate matter, VOCs, formaldehyde, hydrogen sulfide in 8 homes around the compressor station site and are in the process with health surveys. We're also monitoring the 36 stream crossings by the ACP, including 7 floodplains. This testing should be a standard requirement for any potentially polluting industry, but for this to be a regulatory requirement would be admission of the dangers. You, the DEQ, fiddle with Dominion while the planet burns.
My name is David Ball, and I'm a resident of Buckingham County. I came here about 15 and a half years ago, and I served for 8 years on the Soil and Water District as an elected director from the county. In 2015, when this pipeline was brought out, I looked at the plans. I've got degrees in science, experience in engineering, construction. I looked at it and I said, there's something wrong with the design. I pointed out how there was going to be all these turns and everything was going to slow stuff down. In 2015, they put this out with a 36,000 horsepower compressor station. They must have gone back and reviewed my comments, because it then became a 57,000 horsepower compressor station. And I would imagine that if they did construct this and put it into practice, they'll probably want to go to a 70 or higher. The other thing is, I studied from when I was in middle school, meteorology. One of the things that you don't talk about here is the fact that we have really hot summers and we get something called a Bermuda high. And that air just sits for weeks and the temperature goes way up and the air becomes stagnant. And you're gonna have a compressor station that's cranking out at maximum capacity, putting all these particulate pollutions into the air that aren't going to go anywhere because there's no breeze, there's no air, it just sits. And the air becomes caustic and it threatens people's health. And as it spreads out, it gets into the stream valleys, works its way down as a fog on the James. That's terrible. If you look at this, Transco said this pipeline isn't necessary. They can supply all the natural gas. This pipeline is probably about a quarter mile from my house. You look at the fact that they're investing in the Mountain Valley pipeline because this is held up in federal court. So why are we here if this is held up in federal court? Why are we moving forward and spending taxpayer dollars when this isn't a done deal? It's still tied up in FERC. It hasn't come out because the federal court has tied this up. What are we wasting taxpayer dollars for? There are just so many negatives here, and I just wonder why we have to persist. If you put a wall around that compressor station and somebody had to go in there to service that compressor station, that air would be so toxic they'd have to wear a hazmat suit and oxygen tanks. And that's how bad that air would be, because it would be deadly. And that's what we want to pollute our communities with. And that's unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. And we need to be accountable.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, my name is Chad Oba. I reside in the impacted neighborhood of the compressor station. First of all, I would like to present the petitions that I told Mike Dodd that I would present to him, but since we have the additional 11 days, I will be collecting more. So far, we have 185, 127 being from the community itself that is impacted, and 58 from Virginia. And thank you for that additional 11 days. I feel that probably that was given to us, although I've been told otherwise, was because the hard copy was not delivered to our local public library until August 24th. Therefore, the people in this community who don't have internet access, and there's many, many, many people who don't, including in our impacted neighborhood, so they would not have had an opportunity to actually look. So thank you for that additional days. It's not the 30-day we requested, but we'll take it. So, given the extra time to do a more adequate analysis, if you would have granted us a little more time, and we could really do a better job because we're actually getting quite a few experts on board. You've worked with Dominion for many, many months on this, and we really do feel that we deserve equal consideration. I find it troubling that tonight this is here in a school and I clocked it on my way here, that is a mere 8 miles from the site of the compressor station. So the children who go to this school will be impacted. They'll be out on the playground breathing this air in their smaller lungs, which do have a greater impact. And there's other things about that, about small children and how they take in emissions a lot more than we do as adults. So I think you should keep that in mind. There's other things also. The air permit, they've been already said, the impacts that have been done regionally are, the air modeling is drawing on emission data from Roanoke, from Hopewell, and other areas of the state, and this does not adequately represent our baseline here in Buckingham County. Your national ambient air quality standards only look at what happens in a whole region. They don't look at what is actually present here in Buckingham. Also, the radioactive materials that accompany methane and are present in the Marcellus Shale, these come from radon, which is abundant in that shale, and that's not really considered. You also don't look at multiple pollutants and how they interact and the cumulative effect of all those. That doesn't seem to be considered. And also the location, and that's other people have talked about the suit instability. Thank you.
Hello, gentlemen and lady of the DEQ and Air Pollution Control Board. Happy to be here. I represent Yogaville, Satchidananda Ashram, which is 1,000 feet from the pipeline and approximately 5 miles from the compressor station. Yeah, Jiva Abate from Yogaville. And Yogaville has studied this issue, the pipeline and compressor station, over 5 years. And the submissions from Dominion have been faulty, incomplete. The count of the people in Union Hill was given as 29.4. They missed it by a great percentage. There was 120 residents by count there. So now we have the people asking for a permit, providing all these specifications, and we're supposed to believe that they're accurate? Why, the gentleman said that Dominion would be getting a colonoscopy from regulation. If we offered that colonoscopy with the precision of the submissions, we'd be using a penknife and putting it in somebody's ear. So the justification for the demand was poor. There's no need for this pipeline. Transco said it 2 weeks ago, and we've known this for 4 years, that Transco is underutilized and can supply all the gas necessary with minor modifications. The reason this pipeline is being built is for stranded assets. That gas is stuck in the earth, the demand is flat, they want to get it out, and they want to take market share. But they're going to do it by shoving it down the throats of property owners, businesses, and people all the way down the line. So if you're going to exercise your ethics and your character, your honor as human beings, not number crunchers, you will turn this down and you'll be on the right side of history. Now, I'm supplying some technical data on a separate comment sheet, but I think the most important thing here is that this is a hazardous fuel compressor station with two hazardous fuel pipelines in conjunction, which creates what we call a pyramid or a triangle of death. So we've had the Appomattox, Virginia Transco explosion, which impacted homes a mile away. We've had the Highway 77 hazardous fuel explosion on a 20-inch pipeline in Highway 77 in West Virginia that melted the asphalt. We've had a compressor station blow up in Logan, Oklahoma, where a man had to run a mile to survive that. And there are some 30 pipeline explosions and accidents per year in the United States, tracked by PIMSA, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Administration. And these result in deaths, maimings, injuries, property loss. So let's talk about the hazardous fuel that you're exposing these folks to. Please take a stand as a human being. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.